Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again, plunging into those dense documents to pull out exactly what you need.
Yep. And if you're dealing with patents, maybe prepping for the patent bar, or just trying to figure out USPTO procedures, this series is definitely for you.
We're continuing our journey through the Manual of Patent Examining Procedure, the MPEP.
And today, we're really zeroing in. We're looking at Chapter 1800, which covers the Patent Cooperation Treaty, the PCT.
Right, but even more specific than that today, we're drilling down into MPDP Section 1827 fees. And crucially, it's subsection 1827.01, which is all about refunds.
This is the money side of international patent applications under the PCT.
Exactly. Think of this as your focused guide, strictly based on these MPT fictions. Our goal is simple. Extract the key info on PCT fees, what they are, when they apply, and maybe the most interesting part, the detailed rules on getting your money back. And importantly, when you just can't.
And the source material makes it really clear understanding these fees, and maybe more so the refund rules, isn't just paperwork. It's fundamental. Getting it wrong can be a costly mistake when you're navigating the international system. The MPP points straight to specific PCT rules and CFR provisions here.
Good point. And the sources give some very practical advice up front. Before you pay anything, always check the latest official USPTO fee schedule.
Right. It's published weekly, official Gazette, USPTO website, specifically the International Patent Legal Administration page.
Fees change. You don't want to rely on old information. It sounds simple, but it could really save you some hassle.
Definitely worth that little bit of extra effort. Solid advice from the manual.
Absolutely. And just a quick shout out here to Mike Shepard. He's our creative director and the one who organized this whole MPP audio series. It's a big project and we really appreciate his work.
Yeah, couldn't do this without him.
Okay, so let's get into it. But first, the usual heads up for this series. This summary uses AI tools to analyze the MPEP sections. We aim for accuracy, but errors or omissions are possible.
It's for education and information only. Definitely not legal advice.
For the final word, you always need to consult the official MPEP, talk to a qualified instructor, or get advice from a registered patent practitioner. Okay, so with that covered, let's tackle PCT fees.
Right, so Chapter 1800, as we said, lays out the procedures for international applications under the PCT. When you start that process, the sources highlight three main fees right off the bat.
Okay, what are they?
You got the international filing fee, the transmittal fee, and the search fee. Those are the big three initially.
International filing, transmittal, search. Got it. And how do you know how much to pay? Does it change?
It does, potentially. The sources are quite specific here. The amount you owe for these fees is determined by the date the international application is actually received by the office you're filing with.
Ah, so the receipt date locks in the fee amount based on the schedule effective that day.
Exactly. Timing matters for the cost.
Okay. And what about the transmittal fee? You mentioned that one specifically. Anything unique about it when filing with the USPTO as the receiving office?
Yes. The sources point out an interesting detail. When the USPTO is your receiving office, that transmittal fee has a basic part, standard. But then there's an extra non-electronic part.
Non-electronic, meaning?
Meaning it only applies if you file your international application on paper, like physical paper.
Ah, so if you file electronically using the USPTO system.
You avoid that extra bit. You only pay the basic portion of the transmittal fee.
Okay, so the fee structure itself kind of nudges you towards electronic filing based on what the sources say. That paper fee is definitely something to watch out for if you're not filing online.
It really is. One of those small details that directly affects your upfront costs.
Right. Okay, we've talked about paying the fees. Now for the flip side, getting money back. That's often where the real complexities lie, isn't it?
Definitely. An MPP Section 18207.01, which points to 37 CFR 1.446, lays out the rules for refunding these international application fees.
So what's the general vibe? Are they generous with refunds?
Not exactly. The core principle the sources hammer home is this. You generally don't get a refund just because you changed your mind or decided later not to pursue the application.
Okay, so no refunds for just second thought.
Right. Refunds are typically only for things like actual overpayment, or if there was a genuine mistake in the payment process itself.
Got it. So buyer's remorse is out. But there must be some situations where refunds are possible based on procedure.
Yes, and this is where the details the sources provide are critical. They outline a few key scenarios where the international filing fee and the search fee might be refundable.
Okay, like what?
One big one is if the international application is withdrawn before the record copy gets transmitted to the International Bureau.
So you have to act quickly before it officially goes international, so to speak.
Precisely. That transmission is a key cutoff point according to the sources. Pulling it before then might get you those 2 fees back.
Any other way to get the international and search fees back?
The sources also say they might be refunded if the application just never gets an international filing date. Maybe something was fundamentally wrong with the initial submission.
Okay. Now, what about that transmittal fee? The one that costs extra for paper filing. Can you get that one back in these situations?
Nope. The sources are really clear on this. The transmittal fee is non-refundable. Period.
Full stop.
Full stop.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you withdraw early. Doesn't matter if you don't get a filing date. The receiving office, like the USPTO, keeps that fee.
Good to know. That one's gone once you pay it. Are there other fees mentioned in the sources, fees that come up later, maybe with their own refund rules?
Yes, there are. The sources also discuss the handling fee. This comes up if you file what's called a demand for international preliminary examination.
Okay, so a later stage fee. Can you get that back?
Potentially. The sources say the handling fee may be refunded if you withdraw the demand itself before the International Preliminary Examining Authority sends it over to the International Bureau.
Ah, timing again. Withdraw the demand before it gets transmitted.
Exactly the same principle, just later in the process. And, similar to the initial fees, the handling fee might also be refunded if the demand is ultimately considered never to have been submitted properly in the first place.
Makes sense. Consistency in the logic there. What about the supplemental search fee? I know that can pop up sometimes.
Right. That can happen if the International Searching Authority finds what they call a lack of unity of invention. Basically, they think you've crammed more than one invention into your application.
And they charge you extra to search the other inventions.
Correct. That's the supplemental search fee. Now, the sources say you might get this fee refunded, but it's very specific.
How specific?
You have to pay the fee first. Then, you have to formally protest the finding of lack of unity. And crucially, your protest has to be successful.
Wow, okay, so you pay, you fight it, and if you win the argument.
Then you can potentially get that supplemental search fee back. But the sources add another condition. Your protest must have included a proper refund request right from the start, along with paying the contested fee.
That's quite a hurdle. Pay, protest, request the refund with the protest, and win. Lots of steps.
It really highlights how procedure-driven this whole refund process is. You need to follow the steps exactly.
Absolutely. So let's say you think you meet one of these conditions, you've withdrawn early, or you won your protest. How do you actually ask for the money back? What do the sources say about the process? Sounds like it could be tricky.
It is. Strict is the word the sources imply. There are critical requirements and deadlines. The big one is the time limit.
There's a deadline.
Yes. Generally, you have to file your refund request within 2 years of the date you originally paid the fee.
2 years from payment. Okay, that sounds reasonable, but
Yeah.
is it flexible?
Not according to the sources. They explicitly state these time limits are strict and cannot be extended. Miss the 2-year window, and you're likely out of luck.
Wow. Non-extendable. That's a really key takeaway. 2 years, mark your calendar. What else? Do you need specific paperwork?
Yes, especially if the fee was paid from a USPTO deposit account. The sources mention you need to include documentation with your refund request,
Like what?
like a copy of the deposit account statement that actually shows the charge you want refunded. They need proof of the payment and the amount from that account.
Okay, so clear documentation is key, especially for deposit accounts. Makes sense. What about small amounts? Like if you overpaid by just $5?
Ah, yes, the sources point out something really practical and potentially annoying about small refunds.
What's that?
Any refund that's $25 or less. Well, the office won't automatically send it back or even tell you about
Wait,
it.
really? If they owe you $20, you just don't get it?
Not unless you specifically ask for it. The sources say refunds of $25 or less are only issued upon specific request.
That could easily catch people out. You might overpay slightly and never know you were entitled to get it back unless you explicitly request that small amount.
Exactly. It's a you have to ask rule for those small sums.
Yeah.
Definitely something to remember.
That's huge. Okay, one last procedural point the sources seem to clarify. The PCT system involves different offices, right? Receiving office, searching authority, maybe others.
Correct.
So what if you're due a refund for the search fee, but your application has already moved on from the receiving office to the International Searching Authority? Who do you ask?
Good question, and the sources address this directly to avoid confusion. Let's say the USPTO was your receiving office, but maybe the European Patent Office was your chosen international searching authority, ISA.
Okay.
If your application record has already been transmitted from the USPTO to the EPO, and then you become eligible for a search fee refund.
You asked the EPO, not the USPTO.
Correct. The sources state that the request for the search fee refund must go directly to the relevant international searching authority in that situation. Don't send it back to the receiving office once the file has moved on.
Right, because the ISA is the one who, notionally at least, received that search fee or is responsible for the work related to it.
Precisely. The request follows the authority responsible for that specific fee and task, especially after the initial handoff.
That makes perfect sense logistically. Keeps things going to the right place. Okay, I think we've covered the main points.
Seems like it.
So let's try to wrap this up. We've done a deep dive into MPEP sections 1827 and 1827.01, focusing on PCT fees and refunds, all based strictly on that source material. We hit the main initial fees, international filing, transmittal, search, and how the receipt date fixes the cost.
Right, and we flagged that extra cost on the transmittal fee for paper filing versus electronic when the USPTO is the receiving office. A definite nudge towards digital.
Then we spent a good chunk of time on refunds. The big picture. No refunds just for changing your mind. But specific, often time-sensitive situations exist where international search, handling, and supplemental search fees might be refunded?
Yeah, situations tied to things like withdrawing the application or demand early, not getting a filing date, or successfully protesting a unity of invention finding. Very procedural.
And those critical logistics for requesting a refund. That strict, non-extendable 2-year deadline from payment.
The need for documentation, especially for deposit accounts.
And that tricky rule about needing to explicitly ask for any refund of $25 or less. Don't assume it'll come automatically.
And finally, knowing where to send your request specifically for the search fee, directing it to the ISA after transmittal.
It really seems like paying super close attention to filing format, timing of actions, and these very specific criteria for refunds is just crucial based on these MPEP sections.
Absolutely. The sources paint a picture of a system where procedural details really matter. It's not just about the invention, it's about navigating the administration perfectly, too.
It really is. Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. Consider this. How does this intense focus we've just discussed, the meticulous administrative detail, the strict time limits for something as seemingly basic as fees and refunds in the international patent system, how does that underscore the critical importance of administrative precision when you're trying to protect something valuable on a global stage?
And maybe compare that level of detail and strictness to other administrative systems you deal with. Is it unique? Why might that be?
Something to ponder.
Definitely.
And one last time, please remember our disclaimer. This summary used AI tools and is for your general education and information. It's not legal advice.
For authoritative guidance, always go to the official MPEP, a qualified instructor, or a registered patent practitioner.
Stay informed, everyone.
And keep diving deep.